Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. So this is now the second part of system judo that I wanted to teach you in the fight against the intelligence agencies and their absolutely out of control criminal behavior. In the very first episode of the system judo course of how to fight back, I explained how when we are dealing with a captured organization like that, you know, where parts of the intelligence agencies are criminal, maybe other parts are okay, and maybe the top is indeed capture. In a system like that, the way to fight it is to use system judo. So essentially take here from every victim, here, so these dots are the victims who are being essentially assaulted by the absolutely vast stalking and surveillance and harassment network of the intelligence agencies. And instead of all of these individuals just kind of, this is what they want. They want us all to adopt learned helplessness and just be on our own and not dare to speak to anybody because we're always scared of being infiltrated, subverted, mocked and harassed and hurt even more. So instead of doing that, what we have to do is every single one of us recount what is happening to us, right? And then essentially send the accusation and the request to cease and desist straight back to the head of the Secret Service. The head of the Secret Service has to be turned into a targeted individual himself, targeted by the victims, essentially. And this is the only way where you could use the inertia of the system itself. In effect, the inertia of this sprawling, out of control system is that I went to the High Court. I was in front of 3 judges requesting an emergency injunction against the intelligence agencies. I experienced incredible things, death threats, an assassination attempt. I was shot in the back of the head after my first hearing with electromagnetic weapons. All sorts of horrible things happened, and still, almost a year on, they haven't stopped. They just assaulted me harder and harder and harder. They not crippled, but they seriously damaged my knee. They are now still systematically trying to destroy, for example, my finger joints, my wrists, and so on and so on. And they are shooting non-stop into my head with targeted electromagnetic weapons, as far as I can tell, hidden literally at my neighbors' homes. So this system is utterly out of control. I have made several personal appeals to the head of the intelligence agency, and they just cannot be bothered to stop. Well, me just sending requests, it's clear why they don't stop, because that's just one arrowhead, you know? This is just going back to a single victim, being me in this case, and I'm appealing to MI5 or MI6, right? Who essentially, MI5 started my targeting. And now it has followed me abroad, but so it has for other victims. For example, Philip Kerr, who went up against MI5 in a case called Philip Kerr versus MI5. And he was chased all the way to Thailand, right? So this is essentially me going up from abroad now against British intelligence because they started it. But Andrew Parker literally cannot be bothered to stop the assaults against me, even though I have appealed to him personally, even though it was his personal responsibility that I was shot in the head in a London hotel, literally straight after my hearing at the High Court requesting an emergency injunction. Now that it is clear as day that this brutal assault came from MI5, right? This is not contractors in my case, right? No contractor would ever dare on their own authority to shoot a High Court litigant who's going up against British intelligence in the back of the head with electromagnetic weapons, right? Straight after the first hearing, because of the consequences, right? The only people who actually would take that step are the heads of MI5 themselves. So Andrew Parker is personally responsible for that incident. So now that's why I'm sending my public request for cease and desist back to Andrew Parker. If it's just me sending it, it's essentially, the head of MI5 against one little woman. No chance. But basically, Andrew Parker and his lot, MI5, have assaulted thousands of people. Thousands. And if we take it, how many people they've assaulted over the years, it's a lot of people. This is why we all have to start going back to the same person. Because if suddenly it is the head of MI5, Andrew Parker, receiving weekly thousands of reminders of stopping the attacks, that suddenly, every week, thousands of requests, it starts getting unpleasant. Especially when those requests are public. Do you see? So this is system judo. This is by using the unstoppable victimization generated by the system to reflect it back to the one person who can actually make a difference. It is only Andrew Parker who can pick up the phone and say, please take Dr. Katherine Horton off the fucking list at last. Right? He can make that phone call. He just can't be bothered. Right? The same with Alex Younger. He's got the same authority. Head of MI6. He can pick up the phone and say, this is really embarrassing now, guys. Why don't you just stop? Right? Take the equipment out. Go somewhere else. Leave the woman and her family alone, please. But they can't be bothered. Neither Alex Younger nor Andrew Parker can pick up the phone. I was also victimized by by the BND, right? Dr. Bruno Kahl, head of the BND, can do exactly the same thing. He can pick up the phone and say, you know, so Andrew Parker, are you really that keen on that particular victim? Because if not, we could just take her off the list, right? And we could just stop this. So every single one of those has the power. None of them can be bothered. But if I'm on my own, well, of course they're not going to stop. Because essentially the heads of intelligence, who are men, as you know, and they just don't seem to care about women particularly, looking at the sex ratio of the victims, right? Then it's not gonna work. This is why you have to do the same thing. If you're a victim and MI5 is already targeting you, well, you can't make it, you can't become a victim by just contacting MI5, right? You can't be victimized because you are already a victim. So that's what we do. And for it to work, we all have to address our complaint to the one person who can really stop it within a quarter of an hour, right? And that is, in the UK, Andrew Parker. Or Alex Younger. I think that, you know, MI5, MI6 are, for our purposes, pretty much the same thing, right? But this is essentially it. So that's number one of system judo. And I reiterate, you have to essentially focus all the victimization on one person, make the head of intelligence the targeted individual, right? It has to land on his desk, on his head, personal culpability for repeated, premeditated physical mutilation. This is premeditated, non-stop repeated crimes against humanity, right? These people are in deep, deep, deep trouble. And of course there's inertia, but if they really wanted to, they could terminate the program tomorrow, right? And then leave us all to figure out how they actually did it, and then we have an actual, you know, situation whereby no more victimization happened. They could say, well, yes, our systems were out of control. We put things into place. We stopped these sort of crimes. Yes, we're now going to pay compensation, but we can keep our jobs. That would be the clever thing to do. But if they do not stop, it really shows they're a bunch of men who really don't really listen, and they think they know everything better. They are massively arrogant, massively hypocritical, maybe massively misogynist, and generally just couldn't give a damn. Well, if it's like that and they keep mutilating us, then we are ratcheting closer and closer and closer. I already had my finger pointed at them in the High Court 3 times in a row, right? I've already sent public cease and desist to the German intelligence agencies, but you have to do the same thing. It has to be guns to those heads, right, from all sides. Only they can stop this, so you have to point it at their head. We are moving towards court cases, that's true, but the courts are a roundabout thing. The heads of intelligence can stop these programs within one phone call, I'm pretty sure. One phone call, over, right? If they don't make that phone call, it's because they cannot be bothered, right? Or there's an ulterior financial motive or some other ulterior motive. But I'm sorry, in the case of crimes against humanity, that is just simply not good enough, right? So this is what we do. This is system judo. That is why we attack the head, right? To have this amplification factor. And I want you to understand that. And yes, we are also going to the courts. And that's why the victims, please start preparing your victim testimony, right? Start writing together what happened to you. Start collecting your evidence, because we are moving to court cases. But the court case is essentially going, you know, through the back door and getting a court, you know, from above to essentially, you know, decree, like Deus ex machina, that this is to be stopped, These people are to be left alone and to be compensated. That's going to come too, right? And people always doubt, oh, they say, oh, the courts are not going to help us. Well, there are already precedents for this. And if you look at my YouTube channel, just today somebody actually posted a link to several people clubbed together in and actually took the CIA to court precisely for this. Precisely for electromagnetic harassment and these sorts of crimes. And yes, they did get compensation. So it is absolutely possible. And this will become easier and easier as we are ratcheting that way. So it is possible. We will do it. The first thing is straight at the head. The second step is, from the courts. Okay. This is a refresher, and I want everybody to understand, and this is why my videos are so long, because I want you to be able to tune into one, and if this is just a half hour time you have to have everything. Okay, so this is not a repeat from last time. Meanwhile, we're also going to make little decentralized autonomous groups, victims and other people who are investigating crime and corruption in the intelligence agencies. Please get together in small groups, 2 to 12 people, right? Something like that, small autonomous groups. People can help you work and start working on yourself without leaders, autonomously in a decentralized fashion. Start working on how to fight corruption. Bring in your own ideas, your own contacts, get going yourself, right? There will be ideas from me, but no guidance, no leadership. You're in charge, okay? So victims, you start writing your victim testimony and you start addressing public requests to cease and desist to the head of intelligence in your country. So that's number one. And now we are going to move to the second phase. And what did I do with the sponge? Basically, the second step will be that we are also going to take concrete steps to clear out the corruption inside the system here, right? Now, for that, what we're going to do is the following. What we want to do is essentially have these little autonomous groups, right? Now start going up against essentially the corrupt elements here, right? Inside the system. This is us here, all the people fighting corruption, all the victims, and this is the captured organization. Now what we want to do with the captured organization is recapture it, okay? We want these black units to turn back to green. How do we do that? Well, step number one, you need to have lists, okay? In this war, you need to have lists. And the first list that you need to have, right, is essentially the hit list. You're going to have a hit list, right? The intelligence agencies have hit lists, we have hit lists too. Now the hit list can you read that? The hit list. The hit list will be essentially a list of officials and heads of organization or even people at the bottom who you would like to target in the order that you would like to target them. So I would say, first of all, the first person at the very top of your hit list, right, if you're a victim, even if you're fighting corruption, should be the head of intelligence, the head of the Secret Service, because he's the person who can stop the attacks. Even if you're not a victim, you can write to him and say, how come these attacks against civilians still haven't been stopped, even though you have a mandate to fight terrorism? If you're a victim, you send your cease and desist requests to the head of intelligence. So he is the top person on your hit list. And you're not going to kill him. What you're going to send him, the hits, right, will be your public requests. You're hitting them with your public requests, with your letters, and with your administrative, warfare steps, essentially. It will be administrative warfare that we do. That's number one. But maybe there are other organizations. So, for example, this is maybe not the head of intelligence, this is now our society, and then maybe you have your local police, right? You want to go and address your local police. Well then, the second person you would like to recapture is maybe your local police officer and you want to submit at least one crime report for which you want to then request a copy so you can prove that you have essentially reported this crime. So the second person on your hit list in that case, sorry, this is also wet, I can't write. I'm sorry, this is now, this is essentially the local police, right? And you would like to go there, not be sectioned or something, right? This is your goal and you want to report a crime and then get the crime report for that, right? As evidence that you've reported it. To then make it public that yes, these crimes are happening in our area and you know, I can prove it. But your hit list doesn't have to follow mine. It can be your personal hit list and then you go on and on. The third person on your hit list could be, for example, the head of a charity, a head of a human rights charity. So HR stands for human rights, right? Write to them and you want them on board. You want them to help you fight against this. You want to bring them in. By the way, I have contacted the big charities and they knew about these cases. They just didn't want to take them on. But it doesn't matter. We go back to them and then we force them to take it on, right? Because we say, now it's big. Now it's time for you to get on. But for that, we need to target them. So they need to get onto the hit list. And once they're on the hit list, you're going to send appeals to them, letters, keep mentioning it, tweeting the letters you've sent, keep lobbying, you know, lobbying them to do something. Whatever that you do, your hit list contains those people you basically want on our side, right? You want them to work for us. So this means you want them to essentially, those are the elements who you want to recapture. At the moment, they are not working for us, even though they might know about these crimes, right? That means they are in capture. If you get them to work for us, then you have recaptured the system. The system works how it is intended to work, okay? This is the idea. This is the idea of recapture. Now, with the hit list, we don't just stop there. We have a second list, right? And that is the blacklist. Okay, and you know how the intelligence agencies blacklist people, like us. They've blacklisted me and they started stalking me, harassing me, and they, essentially the intelligence agencies have created outlaw lists. So we are outlaws, we do not have human rights. They have withdrawn our right to life, a right to a private life. They have withdrawn unilaterally all our human rights. They decided that our life is not worth living. And that's why they think they can assault, physically mutilate us in whatever way they see fit. Just like the Nazis did, right? That's what they do to us, right? We also have a blacklist. Now the blacklist will contain all those people who you have tried, for example, your local police officer, you went to them, you really tried to work with them, and they didn't cooperate, or they acted corruptly. Doesn't matter. You put them on the blacklist by name. Okay, that's the important thing. The hit list and the blacklist and all other lists contain people by name. You name them. You look up who they are and you name them, right? Ideally, you stick a photo next to it as well, right? Which in a Word document you can do. Take a screenshot, put it in, right? And then you have your hit list and your blacklist, right? Names next to photographs. And you make these lists. Now the blacklist, for example, let's say on my blacklist, I for example, tried to report a crime to Greater Manchester Police when I was brutally assaulted to the right-hand side of my head at the end of October, attending a court case. So I go and report it to Ashton-under-Lyne police station. This is really what happened. And then they don't even allow me to speak to a police officer. They lie to me. They send me back. An hour later when I call and I say, but you said that the police officer is going to come. They lie to me again because they say, no, he's going to come tomorrow. And then several hours later, just before midnight, they send a mental health ambulance to intimidate me. That is what happened. Well, who do I set on the blacklist for this utter staggering corruption. Not the police officers at the scene. I spoke to them, they were clueless. They didn't know why they were called out, and actually they were called out when I didn't open the door to this, supposed ambulance crew. And one of them wasn't really ambulance, he had a police t-shirt. And it was very, very, very odd scene. Very odd scene. Clearly organized by MI5 as intimidation theatre. Who do I put on my blacklist? Well, Andrew Parker from MI5. Okay, well, by the way, he is already on my blacklist. I mean, I've already made public appeals to this guy and he doesn't react. So Andrew Parker, right, is on my blacklist for sure. Head of MI5, yes. But then, what about this corruption? Well, it's not the police officers at the scene. It will be whoever got the phone call from MI5 to pull off that bullcrap. Or maybe this is a standard procedure. You just throw people out of the police station, and then you put on this sort of theatre. But I don't think this is a standard policy. And why am I so sure? Because it took them over 20 minutes to decide what to do. It took them over 20 minutes. I talked to the receptionist, they sat me down, and then they said, after 20 minutes, so the receptionist talked straight away to somebody, and then I was told, go back to your hotel, an officer's gonna come around later. That was the story. But this story took them 20 minutes to come up with this. And then, an hour later, I called them again, and they said, oh, don't worry, he's going to come later. So it took them between, 20 minutes and something like 2 or 3 hours to actually do this. But the fact that they're going to do something corrupt, which is not allow me to actually create a crime report, to actually speak to an officer and present my case, that decision was reached after 20 minutes. Now, that's the time of a phone call. And this phone call either already reached the police officers as soon as I walked into the police station, because MI5 is monitoring me 24/7, and they saw me walk to another police station before that ended up to be closed by that time of the evening. So they saw me walk to a police station, which is like clearly she wants to talk to the police. Then they saw me drive to another police station after I Googled where the hell the next police station is on my phone, which they monitor. So by the time I walk in, MI5 is already on the phone, right? They're like, this is what you do. So, really, in that instance, the person to go on my blacklist is Andrew Parker, but then the person in charge of the local police station is also guilty. It is his duty, it's his responsibility, what happens at his local police station. None of this pass the buck to absolutely everybody and then blame space aliens in the end. No, that's what they do. The truth is, however, it is his local responsibility. So, based on my example, I would say the second person on my blacklist is essentially the station chief in Ashton-under-Lyne. And I can look it up. I looked it up a while back. I just forgot the name. Who is the police officer in charge of Ashton-under-Lyne police station? The buck stops with him. Not with space aliens, it stops with him. What the hell was that? Right? And this is what you do. And why do you do that? Because the hit list is just the people who you try, right? The blacklist are those people who, despite repeated trying, right, here, refuse to cycle back to actual integrity. That's why they're on the blacklist. They are essentially the dots that stay black. In principle, you can have a police officer on the hit list. He says no the first time round. You go back, and eventually he's like, okay, I'm going to make a crime report, right? I'm going to pass it on to my boss. Well, then he was on the hit list, but he doesn't make it onto the blacklist because he then cooperated eventually. However, if this guy insists and bounces you off and doesn't do his job, that's the point. When you go to a local police officer and report a crime, if he doesn't do his job, which is to take the report of that crime, he already, within his own competence, qualifies for the blacklist if his duty is not fulfilled. Do you understand how this works? So this is the idea. You have a hit list and then you have a blacklist. And the idea is, as you're working through your hit list, you either keep recapturing the people in the system who are corrupt and you force them back into integrity, right? So you've done work. Or else what you've actually achieved by populating your blacklist is find out who the corrupt individuals are in this entire captured system, right? And you will not do it alone. Many other people are going to do it as well. And as we're pooling the information together, in the end, all we have to do is compare our blacklists. And by the way, for every instance, keep evidence, right? In the end, when you said, I tried this police officer, he didn't help me, so I put him on the blacklist, we want to see proof of the correspondence. That's why, if you go and talk to him, record it, what you're saying. Record what you say, record what he says. If you write to them and you say in writing, I want to report this crime, send it by registered post, have a copy of the letter you sent, right? Have a copy of the postal receipt. When it arrives online, you can probably check, print out the fact that it has arrived at the police station, and then write to them, request your crime report, and if they refuse, you put them on the blacklist. Ba-va-voom, it goes that fast. But essentially, you have to prove the trail of how they got from your hit list to your blacklist. You have to prove why they're on the blacklist. And if a system is really corrupt, this is super easy to do. And every single time you put somebody on the blacklist with proof, you essentially helped to clear out the system, because in the end, we're going to take all the blacklists with all the evidence that you have. So make a folder. You know, once you have a blacklist, make a folder on your computer, and please back up this stuff, right? Burn it on CD, hide it at your Auntie Mary's, in your Auntie Mary's bookcase, right? Wherever. Back it up. But this is what we're now cycling towards. Getting the corrupt people out of the system. For that, we need to identify the corrupt people. Okay? That's the plan. And then we look at our blacklists all across the US, all across Europe, everywhere around the world. We targeted individuals who, victims of the intelligence agencies, are now going through the system, and we're now finding out, literally like antivirus software, we're looking for the viruses. Where are the captured individuals? In the end, we compare blacklists, and we will see the same names appear over and over. So for example, if you're in the US, you worked on this police officer, you realize actually he's not a problem, he just had a grumpy day. But he is willing to cooperate. You're like, fine, that's great, it's his lucky day. You go to the station chief, they all cooperate, they're really willing to help. Here in that county, they're also really willing to cooperate. And then you go to the person who, I don't know what it's called in the US, the overarching, you know, police chief for the entire, I don't know, the entire state or something. If it's at that point, and he doesn't do anything, then he will be on the blacklist of the people who come from this county. The blacklist of the people come from this county and went this way, and then of those from here, and of those people who came from here, right? He will be on 4 blacklists from every single branch. And this is why, you know, corrupt individuals are very easy to find at the top, because many paths lead to them, you know. And this is what we do. This is how to cycle the system. This is how to clear out corrupt individuals, bottom up, which is essentially the best way to do it. Because on the way up, you also recaptured this police officer and got him on board. And remember, the idea is now, if you talk to police, you have to approach them. I think at this stage, right, you know how hard it is to get help as a victim. Don't approach them with help with the hope that you'll be helped straight away. Approach these people as an educator. You say, listen, I really need help with this. If you don't know about these weapons, because probably your boss didn't tell you or didn't train you in them, this is the material I have. Boom. Then they cannot deny they cannot deny knowledge of it. And you say, for my case, you need to know about this. This is the actual scientific evidence for these weapons. This is how they act, and we're going to compile little packages for you that you can take, information packs to these people, where it proves the technology, how it's used, the symptoms, no. And there will be these packs. You print them off, you put them onto the police officer's desk, and you say, this is the case I would like to report, right? And then you see, do they cooperate? Brilliant. Then you say, okay, now let's go up. Are you going to help me? If they say, sorry, we can't, we have to pass it to, I don't know what, someone up. You say, okay, who is going to make the decision? Who is going to decide? Is it going to be your boss? Yes. What's his name? Right? And then you have his name. And then you check, is he helpful? Is he cooperating? Or are you already hitting corruption? If this guy's okay and he just gives you the feedback of, oh yeah, you know, but we don't really know how to actually find this these weapons. We need equipment. I have to request equipment from I don't know what, right? The state budget. You're like, okay, but then do. And if the state, you know, authorities then deny this, right? I don't know who that would be, the FBI, I have no idea. But whoever would be the next step up, ask, you know? And always ask, always have a name for the person who deals with your case. Because then he is on your hit list. If he doesn't cooperate, he goes on the blacklist. Okay? So, this is the idea. And then, ultimately, this is also very, very, very important because we are not just, this is already good because we're going to combine blacklists and all the proof that we have of people not cooperating in the end. And these people will get the sack, right? If they're lucky. If they're unlucky, they'll literally have to face up to personal culpability and personal dereliction of duty in the case of crimes against humanity. In the case of premeditated, repeated crimes against humanity and potentially repeated calls for help, right? So these people can go from, if they're lucky, they can just be essentially sacked, and if they're unlucky, they basically have to go to The Hague. So this is what we're talking about now. It's very, very, very serious. But this is how we can systematically find these people on the blacklist. But for that, really, your evidence has to be top-notch. Everything, every interaction with these people, you keep all the evidence. Audio recordings, copies of letters, copies of their letters. Every letter you send and get, you scan, you make a digital copy, you put it, I don't know, on a cloud, you burn it on CD, you keep a CD, you put a CD in the bank safe, you put a CD at your Auntie Mary's, you know, lexicon somewhere, you hide it somewhere. And this is essentially the trail that we need. But the point is, if we're all doing it together, yes, here at the very bottom, there are a lot of sheriffs in the US. Right? There are a lot of local police officers in Europe, of course, but don't worry, because as we're going up, we're essentially honing in on the same individuals. It's like a pincer movement, you know, and those, essentially the buck stops with them. The buck stops with them, and don't forget that these crimes have been going on for a very long time, and we can go back in time, and we can say, okay, say if this, you know, if this police chief cooperates, then we say, who was the police chief before you who for the previous 15 years didn't cooperate, right? Because we can go back in time. Crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period. Okay? And when it's about culpability, all these organizations, law enforcement has a duty to investigate crimes against humanity. If they didn't do that, then, we can start going back. The actual nitty-gritty details will be worked out by the lawyers, but this is the basis. So any stuff that they ignored and was reported, they are guilty. They are in deep, deep, deep trouble for ignoring that. So this is why we start generating evidence, okay? And please do put it out on Twitter, put it out on YouTube, because then we also generate essentially digital traces of all of this. And yes, they can try to censor Twitter and they can try to censor YouTube, but one of the things that these little idiots don't really understand is that every single time you censor, because these are digital systems essentially interacting non-stop, making backup copies and essentially pinging each other and checking various things, creating log files left, right and center. Every computer system that looks static essentially has lots and lots of, you know, bots operating on the database left, right and center and doing backup copies. So should anything get lost, it can be restored. There are many, many other handles on this. Essentially traces everywhere. When people start censoring and start mucking with the system, they don't realize, but it leaves traces. And at the moment we can't get at that, but when the system cycles, we're coming back, right? And all of these things will be used for forensics and we get back at these people. Okay? So, this is how it is. I'll just do one more thing, which is also, you'll have a third list, right? You've got your hit list, your blacklist, and the third one will be the hero list. Okay? The hero list will be essentially all the victims that you keep an eye on, and also essentially those who died, unfortunately. those who died, you have to make a list of the victims who you know and those who died, because we will essentially call these people to responsibility for that. So, you know, it's not just your case, you can amplify it, but by also keeping a tab on other victims. These could be victims in your state, in your local community, or just your country, or VIP victims. VIP, all victims are equally important. Do not get me wrong, but what I mean is that VIP could be literally like, I don't know, someone like Katherine Horton, right? Ex-General Counsel of the World Bank and General Counsel for the, what's it called, the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development, right? Now, she was hit with directed energy weapons in August, which had temporarily an effect like a stroke, right? Now, her case is a high-profile case that you can wave in anybody's faces, anybody who doubts that these weapons exist. You can say, look, Katherine Horton publicly reported that she was assaulted by directed energy weapons. So that's what I mean with VIP. I don't mean, you know, very important person like, oh, they are more important than another victim's life. No, 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 no. It's just that they are more famous, so you can, you know, everybody will have heard about them. They will know who they are. But it's important to keep track of other victims, right? No victim can be left alone, right? To left isolated. Keep a regular tab on them. Retweet their tweets. Make backup copies of their data, right? And also keep the memory of those who died, not just alive. Shove it into people's faces. Like, look, this person was already tortured to death. This person committed suicide out of despair, and collect as much evidence and as many details you have about their life and what happened to them, right? And that, again, will be used for system judo. It essentially reflects back on these people. The more shit they do, the more people end up on the blacklist, and the more people they maim and murder, the more people will be here on the charge sheet. Okay, so in a sense, this is the blacklist, and that's the charge sheet. This is what they will be facing up to at The Hague or in their court. Okay, so this is it. This is how we're going to do system judo. Again, it's using the inertia of the system. By the more people are corrupt, the more people we have on the blacklist, the more points of attack we have for court cases and so on, right? Think about compensation and all these things as well, right? And the more people they mutilate, the more injuries they cause, you know, the more people die out of desperation or from the injuries, the longer the charge sheet. So again, we're using the inertia, the violence, and the absolute corruption of the system against them. And the more crap they do, the more stuff lands on their plate. Okay? So this is the plan. This is, in my view, how to recapture the system. I hope you liked it. I'm going to put out other videos as well. So please stay in tuned, and best of luck to everybody.